All right, guys, I'm going to share something super important with you about cats and feline leukemia, and most importantly, how to possibly fight feline leukemia based on recent events. This is Ralph, and Ralph is a half Bengal, half Savannah cat that we got from a breeder who we will not mention. Ralph almost died because Ralph had non-regenerative bone marrow, which means his bone marrow would not produce enough red blood cells for him to survive, basically. So he's supposed to be around what percent? Like 35 to 40%, give or take. And we went on vacation, came back. Ralph looked really sick in a matter of 2 days. And we took him to a local animal emergency room. And he was only at 5%. Which is really, really bad. Severely anemic, gums turning like pale white like paper. His ears, they weren't pink and fleshy. He was looking like pale and white. Very tired, didn't want to do anything. Lethargic, didn't want to eat. So we had no choice but to either basically make the call, okay, are we going to either like euthanize the cat, or are we going to try to administer some kind of treatment? Well, the only way to stabilize a cat that's 5% on his red blood cells is to get him some kind of blood transfusions, which are very expensive. You can't just go down the rabbit hole of just like giving your cat blood transfusions forever either, because eventually the body will try to reject it. Mind you, I'm going to just start off by saying I am not a medical professional for animals at all. This is just basically anecdotal evidence of what happened with me. Sorry, I'm really dirty. I was welding a trailer out there on Sunday. Yeah, so this is just basically something. She's laughing at me over there. This is just something that happened with us, and it's kind of crazy and pretty groundbreaking stuff for feline leukemia. So, anyway, blood transfusions are really expensive. We had to do 4 of them, only to get his percentage up to 22%. We took him home, in which the veterinarian at the emergency room said, look, there's really not much you can do for a cat that's non-regenerative with the bone marrow. It's just basically a matter of keeping him comfortable until it's time to euthanize him, because he has basically become to the point where he's suffering. So my dad saved the day with this super left field crazy thing that some people might think is kind of like snake oily. I'm here to tell you it's not. So we got this natural remedy or homeopathic remedy called FeLife. And FeLife comes in a dropper like this. Okay. And it's a natural remedy made by a guy named Doc Clemens. And there's a bunch of natural ingredients in there. Now, Doc Clemens is a real guy. I'm not like somebody I'm not paid to sell his product or anything. I'm just sharing this with y'all because I'm hoping to help some people save some cats. Because veterinarians practicing medicine are not going to tell you about homeopathic natural remedies because they believe pretty much in drugs and medications that take lots and lots and lots of money and lots of lab time and experimentation and whatnot to prove that they actually work. Homeopathic stuff, this is kind of a different thing. This is what people did before we had drugs. This is how they solved problems. And Doc Clemens, his dad was a veterinarian in the 1940s, and he used to read a lot of his dad's, old veterinarian publications. So that's why he's a believer in a lot of this homeopathic, remedy stuff. Now, when Ralph came back from the hospital on a Thursday, he was good for maybe a week and a half, started to decline rapidly. I mean, you could see his ribs through his fur. My dad showed up with FeLife and gave him one dropper full of that stuff, and Ralph basically got up to use the cat box for the first time in days, which was kind of a big deal. It was a huge deal. So we were like, whatever, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe the blood transfusions are finally getting around to helping him out and whatnot. So we continued to administer 2 doses of FeLife per day as we were instructed by Doc Clemens. And as the days go on, Ralph's actually starting to make some progress. I was able to get him to eat a little bit of food, whereas before, he wouldn't even lick the juice off the wet food. He wouldn't even eat anything. Totally turned off by food. Didn't want nothing to do with it. So, from there, we kept on with FeLife, and I said, you know what, this stuff is actually working. So, I took the time and I took a shot. I was like, I wonder if these Doc Clemens people would take a phone call from me. I wonder if they would want to talk about my experiences and what's going on. So I called his veterinarian practice office. You can't get a hold of him that way. There's a phone number on the bottle. That's the number you're going to want to call if you want to call anybody at FeLife. So I got a hold of somebody over there at the facility where they make the remedy, and they actually put me in contact with Doc Clemens himself, who is a super nice and super knowledgeable guy. I was really surprised just how amazing of a guy this was. And I mean, I'm a military veteran myself. Doc Clemens was in the Air Force, I found out. So, he was actually pretty helpful, and we connected in that way and stuff. And he was actually so interested in Ralph's case that he stayed in contact with us for about a month now, going on with Ralph's recovery. So what ultimately ended up happening is Ralph started getting a little bit better, but he started to kind of have issues with his appetite. So then I went ahead and I got this stuff. This was my idea. I'm not a medical professional, but I was like, okay, cat doesn't want to eat. Let me see if I can find something that's going to make him want to eat. And I called my local vet, asked him about said medications, and they recommended this. This is called Mirataz. And Mirataz, you just basically apply it to the cat's ear, a couple hours. You do it once in the morning and at night, or just...
I would do it once a day for him.
I think we were doing it once a day, but I would definitely check with your vet on that and check to make sure that your cat is safe to use that stuff. But yeah, we would put it on his ear and he would be hungry after that. we were able to get him to eat, wet cat food. So after that, the other big thing that happened, and this was kind of an experimental phase because this is not something that has been proven to be a problem solver with this kind of issue with cats, with feline leukemia and stuff. But Doc Clemens helped me kind of apply some of these natural remedies that actually got Ralph to where he's at now. So the next thing he said was, look, it's been known for humans to have vitamin D deficiency when they are anemic. So what he recommended was that we get a vitamin D test on the cat. Well, vitamin D tests take about 3 weeks. And at the time, I didn't think Ralph was going to live that long. So I wasn't really willing to go and try to drag him to the vet because honestly, taking him to the vet stresses him out. And when he was looking like a bag of bones and basically from day to day looking like he was going to die and wasn't, I just wasn't comfortable taking him to the vet in order to give him a test that may or may not, So at that point, Doc Clemens had researched what might be a good maintenance amount of vitamin D to give him. So there's maintenance dose and then there's supplement dose. Supplement dose is when you take a test and you discover that you have a deficient amount of something in your body, and then we supplement for it, right? Well, because we didn't do that for Ralph, he just gave us a maintenance dose, which was literally a really minimum amount of vitamin D, because if you give a cat too much vitamin D, it can kill them. It can cause, I think it's calcification in the kidneys and arteries or something like that. Don't quote me on that. I'm not a doctor. But it's something along those lines. So we ended up giving him a super small amount of vitamin D. Once we did that, Ralph made a complete 180 from looking like death every day, made a complete 180, and started going the other way. Now I was able to get him to eat a half a can of cat food. Then he started eating a whole can of cat food. Then he was eating entire cans of Hill's Science Diet stew, like the real hearty chicken stew with rice and carrots. He was eating that twice a day. And he was immediately putting on weight. So as this progressed, as he put on some weight, he started to look, his gums came back. He started to look like Ralph again, like his regular cat self. So then Doc had mentioned, hey, let's go ahead and back off on the vitamin D. Keep giving him the FeLife. So we proceeded to do that. And by the way, we had taken him off the Mirataz because his appetite was obviously already back. So I didn't have to make him eat anymore. He would just eat on his own. So then 3 weeks and 2 or 3 days later, we decided, you know what? We're going to go to the vet and we're going to get Ralph his red blood cell levels checked. Because I'm going to tell you, I was ready to have to euthanize this cat at some point, because when you have a cat who has total non-regenerative bone marrow, that the bone marrow cannot produce red blood cells anymore, it's pretty much just a matter of time before the cat can't go on living that way. No mammal can. So I was pretty surprised by this. This was basically starting to look like a miracle. So what ended up happening was we took him to the doctor. His red blood cell level went up an entire 6%, which is a lot. That's a lot. So we've pretty much determined that his bone marrow is working on its own again, because it took 4 transfusions to bring him from 5% to 22%, and then 3 weeks later he got from 22 to 28% all on his own. 28% is still considered on the not severe end of anemic, but he's just almost on that point where he's considered normal. So he's on a steady path of recovery at this point. Now, I firmly believe that this FeLife remedy that Doc Clemens came up with is it's groundbreaking stuff. I believe that because I'm telling you, nothing would get this cat to stop going in the direction of he was circling the drain. He was definitely going to die. But the things that we used and a lot of time and due diligence, we were able to somehow get him to turn back around the other way. So if anybody has a cat with feline leukemia and has major non-regenerative bone marrow problems, you really, really want to look into FeLife. Or even if you have a cat with feline leukemia at all, if your cat tests positive for feline leukemia, you definitely want to look into this FeLife stuff. Because from what I gather from Doc Clemens' patients, I've seen graphs of his patients. When I was talking to him, he's got a couple videos on YouTube you can watch and stuff. But every single cat that had feline leukemia that he tested, that he put on FeLife, the cat ends up testing negative, which basically means it's non-detectable. Anytime you have a cat that, from what I understand, has feline leukemia, has to always be treated as though it does have feline leukemia. But, the fact that he's been able to get all those cats to come up undetected on his tests at his veterinarian practice is a big deal. So that's really something to think about. From my experience, I strongly, strongly recommend FeLife for your cat. It's really easy to give them. You could put it in the food, or what I was doing when he wouldn't eat at all, I'd just, shoot it right down his mouth and with the dropper, and he'd like that. But he would, he would drink it stuff. But you could put it in his food. That's probably the easiest way. Back when I wasn't sure he was going to eat all his food or not because his appetite was really dwindling, I decided to just give it to him like that. After he'd eat a little bit. You don't really want to give him that stuff on an empty stomach probably, but yeah, so that's basically it. I just really wanted to share this with you guys. I'm hoping to help some people save some cats. Anybody's got any questions, just feel free to reach out. And I'm here to tell you, Doc Clemens, that FeLife product, I don't believe it to be any kind of snake oil, like any kind of nonsense. I believe it's a really good product that works, in my experience. So, if it wasn't for us buying that stuff, Ralph would probably be buried in the yard right now. So, that's that. You guys have a good weekend.